Hey modders, welcome back to ModifedRoll. We're sponsored by DM Dice. Use the code ModifedRoll or follow the link in the description to get 10% off all your adventuring needs. We're also sponsored by Arcanist Rum. Check them out and use code ModifedRoll to get 15% off all purchases and free shipping. Having now met with the king, the party have some time to themselves to relax. As Giliana heads out and runs into an old flame, Sinclair hits the markets and likewise runs into a familiar face. But who is it, and why are they also in Belgravia? Find out now in Season 2, Episode 49 of ModifedRoll, Up a Creek. The sun rises over Belgravia again, cresting over the city walls, alighting upon the Asper estate. It is the morning after you have been and seen the king in your now freshly cleaned abode that has been so generously gifted to you by Lady Asper. Sinclair, you awaken in a bed still quite short for you, but you're at least nonetheless rested. What would you like to do on your first day of relaxation in the city?
So I think what Sinclair's going to do on his first day is he's going to try and get his bearings for the city. He's going to go out and explore, see the local shops, get a feeling for where the taverns are, because this is a new city. He's never been here before.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you've already been to the Inner Demon. Would you be heading back that way since you know where it is, or are you heading out in a direction that you've not been to yet in the city?
Yeah, he's going to head out in a direction he's not been in before because he wants to experience the city, as it is, au naturel.
I'm going to simply put some clothes on though.
No, the twerking trousers. Okay, yeah, he
twerking
gets
trousers.
No, he stands at the window, everything flowing in the breeze, does his morning squats, then puts his armour on and heads out.
Swinging in the breeze, more like. You do your squats, get dressed, and you head out into the city. And obviously, having travelled through and sort of been given a bit of direction from Giliana as you came in for the first time, you know that the Asper estate is up in the high streets of the city, in a more affluential area. You know that as you pass down out towards the city walls, you'll pass through the sort of communal market area and then down into the lower streets, where there are more of the common shops and markets, not to use common in a derogatory term, but you're not going to be spending several gold in a shop here. It'll be silvers and coppers. Knowing Sinclair's background, I'm going to assume that you're probably going to head sort of into the common market area, the mixed market, or maybe even down into the lower streets.
Yeah, into the more common with the mixed. Feel a bit more at home.
So you reach the common market, which is very much you could almost tell that the reason this sprung up was because at one point the richer part of the city very much had a distinct separation from the lower city. It's not quite, two walls, but there are definitely sort of gates and fences on one side, and there would have been a cleared area between the two for people to keep a watchful eye. And over the years, shops and markets, all temporary, this is very much like a bazaar type market, where everything is tents and fabric covers, has sort of filled this gap over time. And because of that, because it is sort of bridging both parts of the city, you're going to find those more expensive shops, might even find people selling magic items sort of intermingled with people bringing some of the nicer fish up from the dock markets here to sell to some of the more wealthy clientele of the city. Although not the wealthiest, they will send people down to the docks for those to keep them fresh. Is there anything in particular Sinclair's looking for as he wanders through, or is he just taking the city in?
He's taking it in, but he's also potentially looking for small trinkets and things that he can, buy for his friends.
Give me a perception check.
12.
You pass by a little stall, and it's got a lot of sort of handmade sort of bits of what we would consider sort of tat, just little hand carved almost medallion type things. There's somebody's carved cats and dogs and little things out of wood, and you see little stones in interesting shapes that quite clearly are just shaped that way, just sort of spread out in the stall. But you're leaning down, maybe it's caught your eye, maybe you think, actually, you know what, Twilight would like one of these. And
is there a unicorn-shaped one?
There's a horse. It could be a unicorn. You don't know if this is intentional.
You could buy a gem and put it on the...
Well, no, what I mean is there's a big bump on the head, but you don't know if that was intentional or if it's just carved really badly. But as you're sort of inspecting this, maybe holding it up to say, like, is it a unicorn or is it just a bad horse? Somebody bumps into your back. Like, not violently, somebody obviously just trying in a rush, sort of like moving through, bumps into your back, and you feel them stumble away from you.
I'm terribly sorry.
Oh, sorry, big lad. And you immediately recognise that voice as this cloaked figure sort of like stands up and like dusts themselves off, and you see their face as they turn towards you, just catch under the shadow of the cloak. For a second, you're not 100% sure if it is him, because if it is, he is looking a lot rougher than the last time you saw him. There is a patchy, half-grown beard that hasn't been tended to properly. You can see dirt and dust streaking across his face. But you can just see under the edge of his hooded cloak, you're sure of it, especially with that voice, is Horwick Bogenhofen.
Is that you, little fella?
You can see he was about to step away, having dusted himself off. He hasn't raised his eyes. You just caught like a glimpse of his face. He never looked up at you, but as you say that, he freezes. And you're so caught up in this moment that you're only just now realising that there are 3 other people in similar heavy, thick grey cloaks with the hoods pulled up. Give me an insight check.
Insight. That's a 15.
You are sort of trying to take Horwick in. You have that brief moment of like casting your eyes around, picking up these other people in the same group. And as you look back at him, you can see he's sort of half turned his head, not so much that he can see you again, but you can tell there is like a tenseness to him. And you can see that right in this moment, he is weighing up whether or not he is going to try and run away from you.
Doesn't give him a chance, grabs him, embraces him. He's bigger than him.
I'm not even going to make you roll. There's not a hope in hell. You just reach out, you grab him, pull him in, and there's like a moment of tenseness where you can feel like he's about to try and push away, and then there is this just immediate relaxation, and you hear like a deep sigh. Big lad, what in the abyss are you doing here, mate?
Travelling with friends. What, Horwick? What are you doing here?
Now that you've like got him up close, he's like craned his neck back to look up at you. Give me another perception check, this time at advantage.
Natural 20.
God damn. You immediately clock, as he leans back and the hood sort of falls back off his head, it is like a loose cloak. It's like a travelling cloak. It's not like buttoned up or anything. So as it falls back, it sort of pulls the collar away, and you can see, like looking down on him, he is wearing this like dirty sort of just, it was once like a white or a cream-ish like what do you call, not a jerkin, but just like a cotton shirt. It's very loose around the neck, and you can see around his neck is a tarnished silver collar, and you can see directly in the center at the front of his throat is a purple gemstone. With a natural 20, I will also give you that it is not anywhere near as finely crafted as the ones that you've seen before on the rings. This is like almost like an uncut amethyst set in a silver necklace, or a silver collar.
Sinclair will look at this, then he'll close his eyes, and Horwick will notice as a single tear comes from one of his eyes, and he looks him straight in the eyes and he says, Who did this to you, old friend?
You see Horwick immediately casts a glance at the other 3 companions who are with him. As this has happened, like, you guys know that you have been sent out on a mission. You've just seen... So Horwick probably wasn't, like, the leader, but you know because of the way that the boss speaks to him, that he is sort of, like, de facto leading you, just simply because he's the one who gets given the directions. You know you've a mission to do. You know if you don't do the mission, you're going to be quite heavily punished. as this is like happening and this interaction is happening, what would all of your immediate reactions be?
I think you would see a figure still with her cloak up, covering her face, probably about 5'10", so still far beneath you in height. Sinclair, you see her kind of go up and look very hesitant, and as though she's about to put a hand on Horik's shoulder to kind of try and help him and pull him away. And it's just kind of fidgeting a little bit, and she's like, Horik, we have to go. I don't know what this is, but we have to go now.
Horwick sort of looks to you and then casts a glance over to the other two. What are you two doing?
So from behind the figure that's come up behind Horik to sort of push things along, you see another figure about 6'1"-ish, very lean looking even within the cloak. You can see sort of protrusions that sit in the top of the hood as they seem to be quite nonchalantly playing with what looks like a knife and cleaning out like a middle finger or so. And then as this interaction happens, they sort of come just up a little bit behind us. I mean, we don't want to interrupt such a touching reunion between darling friends, clearly, but we have things to do, Horik, so if this is going to help us, then let's carry on. If not, hurry up, please. I don't want to be here all day.
And what about our last companion?
A much smaller figure in this case. Still wears the cloak over the top. Is not really paying attention to what's going on right now, and instead is staring directly at the ground, looking into the middle distance, and cocks their head. You're talking to me? What? You're talking to me? And then we'll snap up and look at everyone else. What's going on? Where are we going?
Sinclair will look down at this gaggle of strange people, then look Horwick in the eyes. What trouble have you gotten yourself into this time?
Horwick looks at the three of his companions, looks at you, Sinclair, then looks up to gauge the sunlight, and he sort of, almost out of the side of his mouth, says to the three of you, "We've got time yet. We're only supposed to stake the place out first." And he looks to you, Sinclair, is like, "Over here, somewhere more private." And he immediately starts stalking off to an alleyway, sort of between two buildings, just off the side of the common market.
Yeah, I put him down and then he stalks off.
Sorry, yeah, you put him down and then he stalks off.
Yeah, so, Sinclair will follow him.
So as you guys will have heard, we are on our second series of guest episodes now. You know, referring to these as a one-shot, in air quotes. The last one was 2 sessions. This one we're on track for 1 session, but we'll see how that goes. But we have some lovely guests joining us again from some more of the amazing UK-based TTRPG talent. We have 2 people from the same show here this week. I couldn't get enough of them, and also nobody else was available. So, starting with Dan. Dan, why don't you tell us about what show you're from and what character you're playing on our guest episode?
Yeah, so I am the bottom of the barrel that Jordan had to scrape up to find someone to fill a seat. My name is Daniel. I am a player over on the Tales on Tap stream /podcast /YouTube thing /wherever you find Dungeons & Dragons type stuff. We are there. We have a long-running campaign on a Tuesday that we play consistently, and as much content as we can physically push out, given all of our dwindling mental states. It's just a real fun time to be with us, but yes, that's where I'm from. And I am playing Free Rain, known as Rain, the Tiefling Rogue. I'm trying to think of the subclass. Arcane Trickster Rogue, that's what I'm playing.
Lovely. It should be noted that we were actually supposed to have both Dans from Tales on Tap here with us for this episode. I was about to say unfortunately is definitely not the right word, but the other Dan, second Dan, the not as good Dan, I'm just gonna bump this Dan up since I was very rude about them a second ago. I'm just gonna bump this Dan up a little bit. The not as good Dan, unfortunately for us, couldn't make it to this recording because his lovely wife just gave birth to their first daughter. How very selfish of them. But congratulations to all of you, and so happy for all of you. that does mean that we had to have another members from Tales on Tap step in, which was Han. Han, would you introduce yourself? Obviously, we know where you're from, but tell us a little bit about what you do on the stream.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Han, my pronouns are they, she. I am a player, occasional DM, and resident character artist over at Tales on Tap. Just to kind of feed into what Dan said, we are soon to be starting Erelon, Sins of the Peacekeeper, which is going to be a noir episodic adventure with all new characters, and our regular DM, Dan, is going to be in as a player. So if you want to see his chaotic shenanigans as a player and see Chris DM, something quite different from what we normally do, make sure you tune in on the 9th of July, I believe is when we are premiering Erelon, Sins of a Peacekeeper.
Potentially, yes.
Ooh, sounds very interesting. And just to sort of toot my own horn a little bit, in one of the, I think it was the most recent stream.
Yeah, it was the latest stream, yeah.
There was a little twist at the end, which featured this sultry voice to the surprise of all of the cast.
Yes.
Getting to, I will say it is one of the better, or one of the pros for a streaming medium, was I get to watch all of their reactions when my voice came on, which I wouldn't have got to see in an audio-only format. But it was good fun, and obviously a great story to get to lend my voice to, so I'm excited to see what happens with that next. And last, but certainly not least, and also actually the first one to sign up, Sam. Sam, will you tell us about yourself, what show you're from, and the character you're playing?
Hello folks, I'm Sam, my pronouns are he, him. I'm a science communicator, performer, actual play producer for Science and Sorcery, which is a Twitch stream that brings together science subjects and TTRPGs and smashes them together. Coming up really, really soon, we are trying to do all weird and wonderful things. So we're taking Dungeons and Dragons, the Royal Institution of Great Britain, and partnering up with all sorts of different weird and wonderful people to play games in places that you wouldn't expect them to. And as part of these games, I am playing Tego, a very strange little kobold.
Amazing. I should have, just because I thought it was a fantastic idea, but I do believe very recently, you, as one of those very strange sciencey D&D things, you were playing D&D at the Vagina Museum. Is that correct?
Yeah, we hosted a stream with the Vagina Museum where we played we did it too. We played D&D inside inside a vagina, and then we went to the Vagina Museum in London to run an in-person event. And yeah, we're just trying to do things that are memorable like that, and that was certainly very memorable.
I mean, role-playing inside a vagina is a real thing.
I can imagine it was. It did. That stuck in my head because I very recently met through a friend, through another professional professional D&D DM. I met someone who, through passing conversation, learns that theirs is one of the vaginas in the Vagina Museum. So that sort of, whenever you said that you've played a game there, I was like, that information is now lodged in my brain, and I will never get rid of it.
It's uncanny.
So, yeah, so that piece of information is now for everyone to know. But yes, thank you all so much for joining us for this guest episode. Having all these guests on has been an absolute joy and so much fun to run the games for. Not only that, as I was saying to some of these guys ahead of time, it has forced me to explosively world build around all of these weird and wonderful characters and all of the interesting facets that they're bringing to this game, things I had never had to think about with our normal cast. I have had to, my notes have just doubled in the last couple of days, and it has been an absolute joy seeing that sort of change happen in the world. And hopefully some of these changes are going to carry through to the main story. There's a few things that you may hear about again that these characters have introduced one way or another coming up in the future. Well,
I'm looking forward to it.
We will get back to the action for now, and hopefully we'll have a few episodes with these guys in them. I'm hoping it'll come out about 3 or 4 episodes, and then we'll have another set of guests on for the next one. But thank you guys so much, and we will get back to the action. So as the group, and now with Sinclair in tow, heads off to one of these alleys, Horwick steps in, pulls the hood back fully now, and sort of stands, and you almost seem like taking almost not quite a fighting stance, but bracing himself, because he knows whatever comes next isn't going to be easy. And he sort of gestures to the 3 companions who have followed him in. you're right. We have got involved in something dangerous. Honestly, Sinclair, I don't know if you're heaven sent or if this is some cruel twist. What we could really do with your help.
Oik, you'd know I'd do anything for you. You are my oldest friend. You got me through some difficult times back in Haymore, and I assume for you, anything. What can I do for you, my friend?
Horik casts a look to the three of you again. Sort of at this point, he's like judging, like, you know, we're all sort of in this together, but how in this together are we? And you see him make like a snap decision, and he says, and he gestures to the caller, and he says, "We are currently being kept against our will. Slaves, you might call it. My second fucking cousin, of all people. His control isn't absolute, but with these things, he can torment us, torture us. We've been sent out to burn down a rival or a competitor or some bollocks down in the dock area. Supposed to burn down his goods store so that he can't keep competing against my cousin. But for the most part, he's got us involved in smuggling, black market trades, things like that. We can't do much on our own, but with a bit of help, we might be able to take him down." At this, he actually looks to the three of you more so than Sinclair, because he knows Sinclair's going to help, but this is not something you guys would have ever discussed. Like, you would not have had a chance to discuss this. So he looks to the three of you. What do the three of you say or do?
I think the cloaked female figure, she kind of is quite retracted in on herself as he's revealing this information, because you could see that there's this kind of tense panic through her body at the idea that, but also kind of excitement that Horik is saying the things that she's been thinking and has whispered, with her friend previously, and to have it kind of vocalized it's reassuring, but it's also, there's this fear that speaking out loud in such a public place, even though we are hidden in an alley, will get them into a lot more trouble than she is willing to deal with.
Yeah, sort of standing close to the cloaked female, the one with a knife now having it sort of facing backwards in a hand, kind of raised just in case of any potential misdealings with whatever this burned individual wants to do. Sort of, you can see from in the shade of this alleyway, two very sort of dark yellow eyes from below the hood sort of look down to her and then back up, and what looks sort of like reassuring smiles in the shadow, like perhaps this is what we've been looking for. And as he kind of takes a step forward to kind of not impose himself between the two of them, but just sort of make his presence more felt, he'll look to the individual they just met and Horik speaks the truth, but I would hope that seeing as we're all in this mess together and needs to get out, to go to the places we want to go to, your offer of help extends to the three of us as well.
It's my duty. I never turn my back on those in need.
Marvelous. I do love a good boy.
Sinclair blushes.
The final creature has not properly spoken to any of the new individual who's come forward, but will look him straight in the eye and cast Detect Thoughts.
Ooh.
Oh.
So are you going for a deeper probe, or are you just going to be reading surface thoughts?
Surface thoughts right now, I think.
Cool. So obviously the last thing that was asked was, like, do you intend to help everyone else? You gave your verbal answer, but what is Sinclair thinking right at this moment? Like, what is the... Because again, this is only surface level, you don't have to go too deep, but what is like your immediate sort of like thought at all of this?
It's... You know, it's basically, it's these people are clearly in need of help. How could he ever turn his back on them? And then you get the slight inkling that they're like, God, guy with the knife's pretty cute. just the slightest thing in the back of his mind.
Yeah, I think probably the first thing you feel whenever you like dip in for that Detect Thoughts is like the heat of a blush, something that a kobold is not familiar with, but like a warming of the cheeks. as that is like the last sort of physical emotion that Sinclair probably felt, and then followed up with that sort of like, I must help these people, but damn, he's cute.
And taking that information in, then I would then look towards Sinclair and be like, cheeks flush. What does that mean?
Flush it? No. It's the morning fatigue. Yes, I had a long night.
Oh, yes, a strong walk.
I should introduce myself. My name is Sinclair. As you know, I'm an old friend of Horwick, and I will help you any way I can.
Tego believes that. Tego.
Nice to meet you.
So, obviously, Tego, as you introduce yourself now, for the benefit of Sinclair, who can now get a better look at you now in this sort of alley, sort of bunched up, looking down into the hood, and for the benefit of our listeners, what does Tego look like?
I am around a 3.5 foot tall kobold. I have deep, deep purple scales, but along the edges of them is this midnight black. I have also purple irises, but if you look closely, you can see there's a red ring around the eyes. I'm adorned with piercings around my nostrils at the front of my snout, and my claws on my hands are quite worn down, as though I obsessively sharpen and blunten and sharpen and blunten. And I am an anxious little figure. And I continuously will dart eyes back and forth, looking at everybody in the group, but also looking at every single thing that might be moving, whether that is another humanoid walking towards us or the smallest little fly making its way through the air.
As you get a good look at Tego, Sinclair, can I get a history check from you, please?
Okay. 13.
When you look Tego in the eyes and you see that sort of vibrant purple indigo colouring, but also the tinge of red, there's just a tickle at the back of your head of a memory that you don't quite want to reach, that you don't quite want to grasp tightly, but there's a tickle of something familiar, and it makes you uncomfortable. Now, as your eyes adjust to the shade of the alleyway, we have two more characters that you're starting to get a better look at. So, Han, would you describe Laura for us, please?
Yes, so I think at this point, seeing the familiarity, Laura kind of tucks her hood back slightly, still wanted to keep in the shadow of the alleyway, and you see a older human woman, probably late 40s, crow's feet, kind of sinking in, some wrinkles out here and there, blue-grey eyes, some kind of clear, kind of recent bruising around the jaw, kind of this patchwork of white and blue-grey hair pulled back and swooping into a plait that rests down her right shoulder. Kind of got a bit of a stern look, clearly worn and not trusting at initial glance, but you can see as you continue to talk, her gaze softens a little bit, and every so often she'll glance at the knife in her friend's hand, and you can tell that she's just wanting to say something and tell him off for not carrying a knife properly and being impractical and not careful enough. But you also see around her neck, so there's the collar, but also below that is a locket, and engraved on the locket is a pair of scales with a skeletal hand clutching the center as the center point of the scales. It's clearly well worn and tarnished, and you could tell that is something that she would refuse to take off no matter what.
Sinclair, you don't even have to roll, obviously being a paladin and having spent time studying the various temples and gods, you immediately recognise that as a symbol of Kelemvor, god of the dead. One of the good gods of the dead, not one of those necromancy ones, one of the good ones.
Yeah.
A fun god.
The fun dead god kind.
Fun dead god.
Ooh, for everyone.
And finally, as those piercing yellow eyes gaze out from under the hood, the shadows sort of soften as you get used to the light. Rain, would you describe your character, please?
So, seeing his two companions lower their hoods and sort of take trust in this new person as Horik has, you see the knife in their hand. They kind of wave it between the fingers almost as if a coin before, just moving it with a flourish under the cloak into what he reveals to be a very nice sort of leather vest of sorts, lots of buckles, lots of places for knives to be stored, which there happen to be a fair few of at this point. Big crimson red sash with a purple rope around the thing, these sort of almost pirates-esque pantaloons that are black and red striped, with these big brown leather boots that come up to just above sort of shin height, just below the knee. As he goes to take the hood down, it's sort of one of those, can't look and you'll not think too much about it, but as you focus on his hands, you'll notice there is a sixth finger on each one. As the sort of mildly clawed hands pull the hood back, and you see sort of on the sides of his temples, sort of just slightly up, two large brown horns that curl like ram's horns round, with small protrusions sticking out around each one, like more growing. There's small amounts of gold filigree and engravings on them, and just chain and sort of much adornment. The hair is this... It's pitch black to a point, but anytime sort of light hits it, there's this metallic bluish sheen to it, as it's almost got a wet look where it just curls. But they sort of sit just haphazardly across his head as he moves one out of the way. Dusky powder blue skin, pointed ears. He has rings adorning his fingers. Where the necklace is, there is more chains. Dark yellow eyes with just pitch black slits for the pupils. Very... It's well kept 5 o'clock shadow, but it's still sort of coming in slightly. And as he pulls the hood back, and you see the sort of the knives and stuff, it's nice to meet someone who actually wants to help us for once. Free Rain is the name, but you can call me Rain. Everybody does.
So Horwick, you notice with that sort of interaction you had before with Sinclair getting all flustered, you actually look back and see Horwick smiling. And for the other three of you, recognize something you've not seen Horwick do in a number of weeks since you've met him. But a sort of emotion that you're probably more used to seeing on him, Sinclair. It was quite unusual to see him so somber and pained whenever you first ran into him. But with that, he sort of looks around and says, well, it seems we're all on the same page here, and right, the main thing is we were sent here to burn down a warehouse, like I said, competitor of someone who was getting in my cousin's way. Now, you've not met this cousin of mine. Goes by the name of Guilfoyle now. He used to be called Gilly. Said that wasn't prominent enough, so now he goes by Guilfoyle. He's set up in a some sort of cave system he found off the river just outside of the city. And he's been trading on the black market, bringing in, smuggling goods in and out of the city, trying to undermine... I think he's trying to undermine the bronze barrel trade in and out of the city. Give me a history check to see if you find out if you do know the name.
12.
It's a name you've heard in passing. You really don't know a lot about them, but you know that the head, you know that the halfling sort of people, they don't have like a king, as it were. They don't, sort of answer to one sort of city like human sort of peoples do across the lands here, where they all answer to Belgravia, and they're all sort of governed from that sort of like structure. The halfling families are very much run by individual families who sort of like take up and manage the riverboat or sort of barge trade on certain rivers. But in order to better deal with the various races across the continent, you know that they would answer to a essentially a hierarchical family structure, where there are certain families who would then be like essentially managing other families within an area, and ultimately not so much answer, but there's a reason that they refer to them as this, but they have a speaker. In this case, you know that the current speaker of the halflings is from the Bronze Barrel family. and the current speaker resides in Belgravia and manages the trade in and around the city, obviously because it is one of the more sort of influential and sees the most trade in and around this area. So obviously the speaker, the one who sort of speaks for the halflings, would manage the trade around here. So you get that whenever he says his cousin is trying to upset the Bronze Barrels trade, he is actually trying to undermine the hierarchical structure of how the halflings sort of govern themselves. So Guilfoyle didn't see any advancement for our family. He didn't see the Bogenhoffens going up in the world. He wanted to do something about that, and he's got himself involved with some, well, sketchy's not nearly strong enough a term for this, got himself involved with some dark dealings. I can be honest with you, I don't know the half of it. All I know is that he's got some muscle keeping us in line, as well as these fucking magical doodads that have been causing us some severe pain.
Sinclair sort of, you see him, his eyes close, and you see his fists clench, and then he relaxes for a moment. Unfortunately, I know all too well. I've seen magic of this before. Stronger, the people I encountered was almost zombified by its takeover of their minds. Also, it wasn't necklaces, it was rings.
This is something none of you guys would have heard about before, so this is news to all of you, including Horwick. None of you would have ever heard of something like this.
And I wouldn't lie to you, little man.
No, I believe you, big lad. No, these things, well, I suppose they control us in one sense if we don't follow the orders. Guilfoyle is able to hurt our minds. He hurts our... It almost feels like shrieking in the inside of your skull. It's fucking painful, I'll tell you that much. But look, we were supposed to come out and stake out and watch this building for the morning, and then when it gets dark, we were supposed to burn it down. And you see he pulls the cloak aside, and you can see bottles of what are quite obviously some form of alchemist's fire or something similar, more potent than just oil, but definitely dangerous. But if we move somewhere safe for a while, we can head back at the expected time. I don't think news would have got back about the warehouse any quicker than we could get back, and we could perhaps surprise Guilfoyle, take out his enforcers, and free everyone else who's been captured.
You said you have seen this before, yes? This, magic.
Yes. As I say, it was rings, not necklaces, though.
No, but it will still be the same component. Where? How did you manage to get rid of it, or?
For the record, Sinclair, just as a reminder, you have seen the rings on, essentially, like you say, the ones who essentially became zombified, but that wasn't the only jewellery you've seen them on. You did find, the ornate necklace in Lord Carlin's estate.
Yeah, did the wizard have one at Knights of Valor as well?
He had something. I can't remember. He just had I think he had a necklace as well or something, or I think the knight had something similar.
Like
but yeah,
the knight had basically a crystal ball, didn't he?
Yeah. So just for reminder for Sinclair in character, rings aren't the only thing you've seen, but rings are the only thing you've seen that the subservient sort of people wear.
Well, in terms of the control, rings is all I've seen. I encountered a lord in another city, and he had a necklace with a similar jewel, using to control his subordinates. Does your cousin have something like that on him?
He has something in his possession. Every time the fuckery happens, he reaches into his jerkin and grabs something, but I've not seen it.
It could... I think if we can get a hold of that and destroy that, it should put an end to your torment. But I advise you strongly, do not try and take them off.
Oh, believe me, lad, several of us have already tried, but look, and he leans forward and he shows you, this is very much like a collar. This isn't something that's like a clasp or a necklace. This is you can see where it was essentially fused. There's actually a slight burn scar, where this is a bit of metal has been put around their necks and welded together. This isn't something they can just pull off. This will have to be taken off by a blacksmith.
As you show that, Tego will just say, "Collars that control are shackles of obedience, tightening with every act of defiance." And scratches at his neck.
Yes, I've been in collars and had torment done to me before, but I usually enjoyed it. This is just cruel.
Sinclair blushes for a moment, takes a big gulp, then...
You are adorable.
Don't look at me.
I like the wild swings. We get with Sinclair, which is we open up with him stood naked at the window, swinging in the wind, and then it's like, oh no, emotions.
Hey, he can, when he's alone, he's full of confidence. He encounters someone he's got, maybe got his eye on. He's like a little schoolboy. He doesn't know what to do.
Says the man who likes to don the twerking trousers before going to the clubs.
That's clubbing, mate.
That's different. Jaeger bombs
It's
are mine.
different.
So, Horwick has obviously suggested that you wait within the city until it becomes closer to nightfall before heading back.
Do we know if these have a limit of range between the person who has the controlling device and where we are in just the world?
So I would say from experience, you know a handful of things. One, these you would know from having seen it happen or from people, having had it done to them. The person who controls it, in which case this being Guilfoyle, is the only one you're aware of who is control over these currently. It isn't like an omniscient thing. He cannot see what you guys are doing all the time. It is very much he gives you directions. If you fail to do them, you get punished. In this case, you were told, go out, burn down the warehouse, and be back by time, which probably would have been like an hour after sunset or something. And if you don't get back, he will trigger the thing and you will just be in pain until you die. You will know that you've seen in the past that people who have been certain distances away have still been affected, who have a similar thing, do a thing by this time, regardless of whether or not he can, Guilfoyle can see them. He is still able to affect specific people as long as he is aware of who he is targeting. You have never seen the distance tested. You do know that there were people who were sent out similar to this, to do stuff in the city, who didn't return. Guilfoyle made a big show of coming in and saying they will be punished, and then the body is brought back by other slaves the next day. So whether or not his thing killed them or he's just sort of trying to trick you guys and literally just sent somebody else to stab them, you don't know. All you know is he said they were going to die, they came back dead.
Just a quick question before we get into the details of how we're going to go back. Do you want this cousin to be alive by the end of this, or is that sort of a grey area?
Can Rian give me an insight check?
I can. But I've never used this character. What's my modifier? There we go. That is a 14.
You can see, considering you're talking about family, and that for halflings, family means everything, there is just a slightly longer than comfortable moment of him considering this. And he's then he finally says, ultimately he should answer to the family, but if he gives us no choice, then we have to stop him one way or the other.
I mean, look, I don't want to speak on her behalf, but Hagatha here can talk to the dead after they have died. So we can just do that, and then he can answer from beyond the grave.
I can also hold him in kind of a state of not quite dead, not quite alive. So, we have options.
Well, it's always nice to have options, like I say. Preferably, if we could take him alive, then the families can take care of him. They don't look well upon betrayal like this. So, I imagine he'll be punished one way or the other. But, like I say, if he puts up a fight and we have no other options, then don't allow me to stop you.
Oh, I wouldn't. I was just merely being polite before I put a knife through his head. Sorry, just another one.
Warwick surprisingly just nods.
Yeah, fair.
Big lad, was it? And he looks directly to...
Yes?
From the people you've met before, if we unalive the individual who is controlling these, does the magic tend to fade, or is that something that needs to be done away from the person who controls it?
As I say, certainly with the Lord I encountered, it was the necklace. That was what was controlling them. If we can find this device that is on the cousin's person and destroy that, it should fade.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is dead or alive.
In theory, we wouldn't have to kill him, but as Horwick says, I wouldn't blame you if you did.
As long as there's no blame to be thrown around, I'm fine with it.
Says the holy paladin of Paylor.
Yeah, but it's that line, isn't it? It's there like, he has committed atrocities and enslavement. Kill him, smite!
Look, paladins have smite for a reason.
He shall be smoot. Well, I mean, we're not familiar with this town, so Horwick, Sinclair, do you want to take us to wherever you feel would be safe, or what are we doing?
Horwick looks to you, Sinclair. It's like, I've only travelled through here a few times, big lads. Do you know much about this place?
I've not been here long myself. I mean, there's a decent tavern we could go and sit in for the day.
I mean, I could murder a pint.
Well, okay. And then, Sinclair will look around, see if anyone's noticed them. Follow me. I'll lead the way.
Are you going to take him to the goddamn inner demon?
Yes. It's the only tavern I know.
Great. Was not expecting to have to play Dimmy today. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks very much for sticking with us. As always, thank you to Lixie B for our wonderful logo, Jeff for all the amazing artwork he creates that you can find on our online store, the Stormweather Shanty Choir for allowing us to use their song Drunken Sailor, wonderful sponsors DN Dice and Arcanist Rum, links for both can be found in the description, Michael Gelfie and Monument Studios for allowing us to use their tracks in our scoring, and of course all of our wonderful Patreon supporters who have allowed us to continue creating additional content for the podcast. Your support means the world to us, and we can only hope that with your help we'll continue to make great content. I also just want to start out by thanking all of our wonderful guests again. I absolutely adore doing these guest episodes. It is always a joy to have these people come on and just fill out this world with all of these amazing characters and all of these amazing ideas that I hadn't thought of to include, and it's just such a joy. So thank you to Dan and Han from the Tales on Tap stream and podcast, and thank you to Sam from Science and Sorcery. We will have links to all of their work in the description, and of course those two shows are going to be our recommended shows for this episode. So if you haven't checked them out before, please go and do so. These guys are putting out some amazing content, and it's an absolute joy to listen to them and to have them on our show. So please go and show them some love and give them a listen. Other than that, you'll now have heard we've tweaked our sort of standard outro a little bit, as we've now been given access to a phenomenal catalogue of musical tracks from the wonderful people over at Monument Studios. Now, the reason we have access to those is because they have just launched a Kickstarter for their Fantasy Plus D&D tool. This is a tool that allows you to play music and ambience throughout your gaming sessions, and it looks like a fantastic tool. They've had this in development for a while, and they've had a beta version that you could use through a web browser for a while, and this Kickstarter is essentially to rebuild that tool from the ground up, implementing all of the changes and improvements that they've been wanting to do for a long time, but were going to be more hassle than it was worth doing in its current version. So the Kickstarter will allow them to rebuild it, but will then allow them to further build on the existing product. They'll be able to expand their music library, which is already over 100 gigabytes of studio quality sounds, which you're going to be hearing probably a lot more of in our episodes, as we'll be using a lot of these in our shows. But we'll have a link to this Kickstarter in the description as well as everything else, so go and check it out while it's live. I really recommend it. They've been absolutely wonderful to work with, and they've been so kind to give us access to all of this to use in our show. So keep your ear out, listen out for their tracks in the episodes, and also go and check out the Kickstarter. But that's it for this episode. I hope you're enjoying these guest one-shots, air quotes, one-shots, and I hope you continue to enjoy them, because I had such a good time recording them, and we've got a few more to come. But that's it for now, so thanks very much for sticking with us, and we'll see you soon.